Hello and welcome to Dining with Death, where we discuss infamous cases of death and murder that have an element of food to them, and then we cook or sample the food from the case. I'm Stacy Lee. Let's begin.
Non-emergency. My husband's not breathing. I need someone to come over to the house right away. Hold on for medical, ma'am, all right? Hello? She hung up. She said her husband wasn't breathing.
That is the call that came into the Lasvegas 911 dispatch center on September 17th, 1998. The hysterical and distraught woman on the line says her name is Sandy Murphy. She is upset because she has just found a man she calls her husband unresponsive on the floor of their home, their large, rambling ranch home just off the Las Vegas Strip. The man, who is not legally her husband, is casino mogul Ted Binion of the famous Binions Horseshoe. This is the beginning of the long and sordid tale of the rise and fall of a very complicated man who made some very poor decisions. Ted Binion was born in Dallas, Texas in 1943. His father was Benny Binion, the American gambling icon, career criminal, and convicted murderer. He was a privileged kid who spent summers at his family's ranch in Montana and sometimes helped out the ranch hands while he was there. Someone once attempted to kidnap him as a kid, but we'll have to save that story for a different day. Ted was an avid history reader and loved anything that had to do with the Civil War. He was also mathematically gifted, and stories abound as to how he could do complex math problems in his head. When Ted was only 21 years old, his father lost the right to hold a gaming license as he had been convicted of several crimes. So Ted and his 23-year-old brother, Jack, took over the day-to-day operations of the casino. Ted was given the title of casino manager. Over the next 30-plus years, Ted was the face of Binion's Horseshoe. He was seen there almost every evening and became well known as the host of the Horseshoe's poker tournaments. In 1986, Ted is arrested on drug trafficking charges and continues to draw police attention for his connection to mafia man Fat Herbie Blitzstein. From then on, he is at odds with the Nevada Gaming Commission, and it even bans him from running his own casino in 1996. He appeals but loses that appeal and is then banned from even entering the property during his suspension as he undergoes drug testing. In March of 1998, months before his death, he is then stripped of his gaming license permanently for his known associations with the Chicago mob. He is never again allowed to associate with the casino, and some believe this was what pushed him over the edge into serious drug use. The Nevada Gaming Commission does not mess around. Once you're on their list, your days are sometimes numbered. Ted was a known drug user, and rumors began to circulate that he was even using heroin and had become an addict. He also loved to gamble and play craps, saying he liked craps because, quote, you can turn a toothpick into a lumberyard. It's only fair to mention that with all his faults, he was also known to give financial assistance to friends who might have needed some help and was very generous with his money. Ted was also generous, shall we say, with his affections, and he was always moving from woman to woman, despite being a married man and father. In February of 1995, Ted Binion meets a stripper at one of his hangouts, Cheetah's. Her name is Sandra or Sandy Murphy. Reportedly, she calls him Bunion instead of Binion for the first few weeks of their relationship, acting like she doesn't know who he is, and even tells a story that she didn't believe him when he said he owned Binion's Horseshoe. Yeah, right, Sandy. That story is about as believable as some of the stuff you see on the news these days. All the girls that work in the clubs know who the high rollers are. Let's just get that clear. Ted and Sandy begin a relationship that is so blatant and overt, his wife and children pack up and leave him, moving back to Texas. He then moves Sandy Murphy into his home. I try to keep my snarky comments to a minimum, but he sounds like a bit of a peach, doesn't he? And if I were one of those people that said things like, sometimes you get what you deserve, I might be saying that in this case. Ted openly told stories about, quote, beating the crap out of Sandy Murphy and laughing about how she was a good fighter who could hold her own. Yeah, that thing I just said a second ago, I'm going to go with that. Murphy and Binion are together for a few years, and his drug abuse becomes more and more severe. When Ted finds out he's been permanently banned from any and all association with the casino, he knows he has to do something about his enormous silver collection that has always been housed in a floor-to-ceiling vault in the basement of Binion's Horseshoe. He hires a crew to dig a 12-foot deep vault in the desert on a piece of property he owned in Pahrump, Nevada. I spent about a month in Pahrump, Nevada one night. Yeah. I used to play with a really well-known country band out at the casino in Pahrump. We'd do 5-night casino stints out there, and Pahrump is an interesting place. Let's just leave it there because we're going to talk about Pahrump in an episode down the road. The construction crew that Ted Binion hired dug the hole on his property and created a concrete bunker in it. Inside of that bunker, Ted Binion puts 6 tons of silver bullion, paper currency, tens of thousands of Horseshoe casino chips, and more than 100,000 rare coins, including Carson City silver dollars, many in mint condition, estimated to be worth between $7 and $14 million. He hires MRT Transport, a trucking company, to transport his silver from Binion's casino to the vault in the desert. MRT Transport, this trucking company, is owned by a man named Rick Tabish. The only 2 people that have the combination to the vault in the desert are Ted Binion and trucking company owner Rick Tabish. What Ted did not know is that the player was being played. His girlfriend, Sandy Murphy, was having an affair with Rick Tabish, and the 2 have a plan.
Not an emergency. My husband's not breathing. I need someone to come out of the house right away. Dr. Medical, ma'am, all right? Hello? She hung up. She said her husband wasn't breathing.
We arrive back to where we started, with Sandra Murphy calling for help, saying Ted is dead on the floor. EMTs and police arrive to the sprawling home and find him lying on a small mattress on the floor of the estate located at 2408 Palomino Lane. Empty pill bottles were found around the body, and an autopsy and toxicology report revealed that Ted Binion died of a combination of Xanax and heroin with traces of Valium. Initially, police treated the death as a possible suicide. Sandy Murphy told investigators that Ted had been suicidal since losing his gaming license. But Ted's sister, Becky, said they spoke almost every day and that Ted was not depressed or suicidal. The more investigators looked into the death, the more they became convinced that the scene had been staged. Ted's body did not show typical signs of overdose, and his stomach contained heroin, which is not the usual way of using heroin. Almost immediately following Ted Binion's death, Rick Tabish is seen digging up the vault in the desert of Pahrump. Boy, this is the brain trust, you guys. I mean, he didn't even wait like days. It was, the guy's dead and let's go dig up his fortune. Not only that, but Sandra Murphy is seen on the surveillance cameras inside the home less than 24 hours after the death of Binion, removing strange items like a wine glass and cigarette papers. It took 6 months, but the chief medical examiner classified the death as homicide, and in June of 1999, Sandy Murphy and Rick Tabish were arrested for the murder of Ted Binion. They were also charged with conspiracy, robbery, grand larceny, and burglary. The prosecution then comes up with a theory, and it is a very unusual one. It contended that Murphy and Tabish drugged Binion into unconsciousness and then took turns burking him. Burking is a strange and little-known form of manual strangulation where a person is smothered by compressing the torso. This method leaves no visible injuries. The prosecutor also claimed that Ted Binion, before his death, had contacted his attorney about cutting Sandy Murphy out of his will. The case went to trial, and Rick Tabish was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, and Sandra Murphy was sentenced to 22 years to life. Both defendants appealed their convictions, and in July of 2003, the Nevada Supreme Court overturned the murder convictions, citing an error by Judge Joseph Bonaventure on his instructions to the jury. The defendants are granted a new trial, which begins on October 11, 2004. The result? Both defendants, Murphy and Tabish, are acquitted of murder, but were convicted on the lesser charges of burglary and grand larceny. Murphy was sentenced to time served and was set free. Tabish, who also had a weapons charge, was returned to prison and was not released until 2010. This is one of the earliest cases that was ever covered on TV. It was a really big deal. It had it all: money, Las Vegas, sex, casinos, strippers. It had the whole shebang. They even used this case as the inspiration for an episode of CSI. Sandra Murphy is reportedly living in California with her boyfriend, an art dealer. Rick Tabish lives in Montana and recently applied to build a slag processing plant. I'm steering clear of the obvious jokes there. Well, maybe we will never know. Was Ted Binion murdered? Did he commit suicide, or did he die of a drug overdose? But stay with me right now, because I'm taking you dining with death. Surprise! Look where I am. Normally on this playlist, I cook for you, but I thought, I'm so close to Vegas and there's a lot of good restaurants inside Binions. Why don't I just show you some of the restaurants, and that's how we'll go dining with death today. Fremont Street in Las Vegas is a modern-day sideshow. We lived in Vegas about 2 blocks from here for almost 3 years. This is not the Las Vegas Strip you see in TV and movies. This is downtown, quite a distance from the part of the Strip that has the famous theme hotels that you might be familiar with. This is Old Vegas. It is decades older than the mega resorts on the Strip, and it is significantly less expensive to stay, eat, and drink here in downtown. It enjoyed a heyday from the 1930s to the 1970s. This portion of Fremont Street used to be an actual street. I love these old photos of Vegas. It was such a glamorous time period here. People would really dress to the nines, and the casinos were packed with the fabulousness of the day. The El Cortez, which is where we usually stay on Fremont, opened in 1941. We just love the nostalgia here. The Golden Nugget opened in 1946, and then the Fremont Hotel opened in 1956. The Pioneer Club opened and put this guy up, the famous Vegas Vic, in 1951. The wedding scene for Viva Las Vegas with Elvis and Anne Margaret was filmed here. It was about as chic as it gets. But then, as the large resorts began to appear along Las Vegas Boulevard, this area became the seedier side of Vegas. Really seedy. This part of Vegas almost died off in the 80s because so many properties had fallen into disrepair. But thanks to Mayor Oscar Goodman, Derek Stevens, Tony Hsieh, and others, it was saved and revitalized and is now booming. In 1994, this portion of the road was closed forever to traffic, and a huge construction project began. In 1995, the Fremont Street Experience opened after $70 million was injected here into the downtown area. This massive light canopy was created that constantly shows bright, colorful images like dice, ads for nearby casinos, space, nature, and psychedelic patterns. Street performers can rent one of these small, designated areas to perform, well, just about anything. I can't show you a lot of them as they're pretty risque, but then there are others like these guys showing off dance and acrobatic skills that are a little more family-friendly. Now, if you want a photo with them or of them, they'll expect a donation. That's Fremont Street etiquette. You can do everything right here, from get a 4-star meal to watch somebody throw up in a garbage can, right here on this little patch of Vegas soil. Binions Gambling Hall and Hotel, formerly called Binions Horseshoe, opened on August 14, 1951. The emphasis here at Binions has always been one thing: gambling. Other casinos focused on big performing acts, singers, comedians, but not Binions. This casino has always been the great equalizer. There have never been special roped off areas for high rollers here. You sit and you play. Now, we could do an entire episode on the history of Binions, but these days, most people know it as the host of the World Series of Poker. This empty, large area at the back of the casino is something you absolutely do not see in other Vegas casinos. Normally in casinos, you see every square inch packed with gambling machines or tables, but this area is used for the World Series of Poker, and when it's not in use, it sits empty. I love these old photos, especially this one of Patsy Cline. I sing a lot of Ms. Cline's songs in my other life, and she is just quintessential glamour here. Binions has always been famous for displaying $1 million in cash. I would have loved to show you that in person, but COVID. It was removed for security reasons. Staff was cut back and it was taken off the floor because of that, but I found some photos online and hopefully they will bring that feature back because people really enjoyed seeing it. There are several restaurants inside of Binions, including Top of Binions Steakhouse, Benny's Smoke and Barbecue and Brews, and Binion's Cafe. Some of these were closed due to COVID, but when we were living here in Vegas and spending a lot of time here on Fremont, Binions was undergoing a remodel, and just before we moved, the project was revealed. The new addition to Binions is this bar and restaurant called Whiskey Liquor Up. It's billed as a full-service saloon with a rotating bar as its centerpiece. Now, we were here on a Sunday afternoon during COVID, so we were very lucky to get these primo seats right here on the second-story bar overlooking not only the Fremont Street experience, but also this stage. There are 2 of these smaller stages and 1 main stage here on Fremont, and normally they've always got a band playing on them. When there isn't a band, they'll have things like, DJs, dancers, acrobats. So it is very strange to see this stage sitting here bare, but COVID has done that. When things get rolling again, you'll have to get here at like 11 a.m. to get these seats, but it worked out great for me because I can give you a great look at the best seat in the house here on Fremont. We ordered the sampler platter so we could taste a little bit of everything. It included house-made potato chips, sliders, wings, and onion rings. Everything was tasty, I would say solid bar food. It came with plenty of dipping sauces and served as a nice little snack while we were wandering. Whiskey Liquor features an open kitchen, which as a chef I can always appreciate. That says they're clean, they're professional, and they have no problem with customers seeing behind the scenes. There are distilling models set up around, and you can walk by the beer fridge and see the inner workings of the keg room. Even now, as Vegas has just begun opening back up during the pandemic, the place was buzzing and people were happy to be out enjoying a meal at a table like we used to. Binions is a Vegas tradition. It has such a long history here in Vegas and will forever be entwined with early Vegas history and even with scandal because of Benny and also because of Ted. They were men who loved their gaming, loved their liquor, and loved their women. Unfortunately for Ted, he loved those things a little too much, and the excesses of Vegas ended up leading to the demise of the boy who would be king here at Binions.
Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. It helps us so much when you subscribe. Be kind to each other, you guys, and stay safe, and I will see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.